My name is Nolan Kendrick. I'm the Vice President of the Friends of South Cumberland, and on behalf of the Friends, it's my pleasure to welcome you all here to the Big Red Barn this evening to the Pioneers of the Park celebration. I want to thank you all for coming. What a wonderful crowd this is, and what a wonderful event we had today at Pioneers of the Park. And I want to begin tonight by giving just a special thank you to Hal and Madeline Adams, our gracious host for this evening. For this incredible venue, letting us have this here, it's just been a wonderful day and a wonderful place to get together. You know, the incredible legacy and support for the park from the entire Adams family. They've been involved in the park since day one, and Hal and Madeline are of course here tonight, and there's several other members of the Adams family, the Armisteds and the Tiptons here this evening, and just a very special thank you to all of you for everything you've done for the park. This is a very exciting time for the Friends of South Cumberland. With our park expanding so quickly and in so many different directions, it's oftentimes difficult to keep up with the changes. I know George would vouch for that. When the Friends were formed in 1994, the park was about 15,000 acres. There's been additions through the years, and now there are several new ones, either recently added or very close on the horizon. With these new tracts of land that will hopefully all be added very soon, tracts at Denny Cove, Sherwood, and here at Shady Valley, our beloved park is on the verge of moving from what we've always proudly said, the largest wilderness state park, to the largest state park, period, at over 31,600 acres. Yeah. So that's definitely something to celebrate. We certainly want to celebrate these new areas of expansion and embrace all these new opportunities that these areas will afford us in the future. And so with all these changes on the horizon, this seemed like the perfect time to look back and reflect on how it all got started, and to thank all the people that were so integral in the history of this park, to honor some of the pioneers of the park, and their hard work and dedication laid the groundwork for this magnificent park that we all know and love today. We owe a debt of gratitude to so many people, many of you here in this room tonight. We have, of course, our guest of honor, Governor Winfield Dunn and his wonderful wife, Betty. And of course, State Naturalist Emeritus Mac Pritchard. And we'll hear from both of them later on in the evening, for sure. Also wanted to just recognize a few others. Sanford McGee's here tonight. His family sold the land around Stone Door and at a substantial discount to the state. Still very much involved with conservation issues. Sanford represents the South Cumberland Regional Land Trust now. Wally Bigby and his wife Pat are here tonight. Yeah, absolutely. The founding president of the Savage Gulf Preservation League, and just has done so much for the park, and can still outwork me on trails, and does quite frequently. We've got John Greeter here tonight, and the entire Greeter family responsible for the state acquiring the land around Greeter Falls, and John still serves today. He serves on the Friends Board, and is just a leader in the conservation efforts all around this area. We've got Bob Richards. Bob's here tonight. He was integral in many of the trails that we all know and love to hike so much. The project manager for the development of trails in the park from 76 to 82. And he's still helping today as the Tennessee Greenways and Trails Coordinator. He's always letting us know when any of those grants are available, and we sure do appreciate that. So thank Bob for being here. At this time, I want to introduce Latham Davis, the president of the Friends of South Cumberland, and he's going to come and present the Yateman Award.
John began his career as a naturalist in 1974 at Shelby Forest State Park in Memphis. As he told me, all I did was interpretive programs, 8 programs a day from a bird program in the morning to a campfire program in the evening. Rennie, at the time, was the receptionist at Shelby Forest, and so that's how they met. And John said, I would pass her in the morning going out and hope she would notice me. So John was promoted to ranger, and John and Rennie married. And then John was transferred to Timms Ford State Park, but it was against his will. In fact, well, Rennie was teaching by then, and her salary was larger than John's. And so John turned down the job. And then he told me, that if he didn't go to Timms Ford, he would be fired. So Rennie and John went to Timms Ford. For a while, John was a ranger naturalist at both Timms Ford and South Cumberland. Then he replaced, correct me if I'm wrong, Billy Thompson as park manager of South Cumberland, and that was in 1981. Not only did John continue to give interpretive programs, but he and Rennie were involved in the creation of the new Visitor Center. Now that was a huge project then, and we're somewhat aware of what a project that is, because the Friends have been involved with State Park and renovating that Visitor Center. And if you haven't seen it, go by there. If you can see it in the near future, go by there. John said the original budget of $10,000 for exhibits never materialized. He had $300 in his park manager's budget, so that $300 and a lot of volunteer help helped create the display. Rennie did cross-stitching to label the exhibits, and even though we have recently done that renovation, Rennie's cross-stitching labels are still part of the exhibits at the park. For the work they have done and for the thousands and thousands of hours that they have devoted to school groups and teaching in the classroom and civic groups and programs of all sorts, we are pleased to present the Harry C. Yateman Environmental Education Award to both John and Rennie.
Thank you, Latham, and thank you, John and Rennie. There's many organizations that we've partnered with throughout the years, and there's several of those represented here tonight. I wanted to acknowledge those. We've got from the Nature Conservancy, Paul and Peg Kingsbury. Thank you for coming tonight. And thank you for all the Nature Conservancy does. Oh my goodness. And also the Birchip Springs Historical Society, Susan Snow and Tom here tonight. Thank y'all for coming. The Friends are working to help preserve the historically significant photographic and field note collection of State Naturalist Emeritus Mac Pritchard. As you've just seen, Mac loves to take photographs. And he's got an enormous amount of them, and they're just a treasure. And so we've been trying to, through Rick Drees has been trying to work with Mac to catalog some of these things. And we're very pleased to be joined in that effort by the Tennessee Federation of Garden Clubs. And tonight, the president of the Tennessee Federation of Garden Clubs, Ms. Pam Dowd, is here and would like to make a presentation.
you so much, Nolan, and good evening, everyone, friends of South Cumberland and honored guests. It's my privilege to be here on behalf of the Tennessee Federation of Garden Clubs. Just a little bit about us. You may wonder who we are. We're not just a bunch of little old ladies in tennis shoes anymore. We do a lot for our community and our state. And by doing a lot, we've worked a great deal, spent a great deal of time with Mac Pritchard. We are into conservation, all of our natural resources. We have a conservation camp every year. This year we had it at Montgomery Bell, and we study conservation. We study how to be good stewards of the earth. We could not have our conservation camp without Mac Pritchard. He's just Mr. Conservation, we call him. We love him dearly, and just to listen to Mac, and if there's someone here that has not seen a presentation by Mac, you've missed a lot, because he can do any bird call you can name, and he's funny, and you don't get bored, and the beautiful, beautiful photography that he's done throughout the years. And what we want to do as the Federation, I did mean to tell you that we have about 3,200 members across the state, and we belong to National Garden Club, the largest organization of its kind in the world. So we are a mighty force, and we want to help preserve Mac's slides and his film. We've set aside a fund, it's called our Conservation Fund, and it's for Mac's use to preserve. And thank Rick Greaves for helping him. I had a conversation with Rick, and he told me that he volunteers his time, his gas, his energy, and he and Mac meet for lunch. One time Mac pays for lunch, the next time he pays for lunch. So they have it all worked out. But we do have a contribution. They have bought a very fancy projector. I know nothing about it, and some other things, and it's to preserve Mac's work. The story I got was that there wasn't room to store these. They're slides right now, and they take up more space than all the little thumb drives and all the other things they're putting these materials on. So I have a check for Friends of Cumberland and for Mac from the Tennessee Federation of Garden Clubs. I'll tell you the amount. It's a little less than $1,500, and the more we have, when Mac needs it for something, it's yours, Mac. But we do have a fund, and we have a little over $5,000 in it right now, and it's set aside for Mac Pritchard. And we love him so much, and we want to keep all of these wonderful photographs that he's done throughout the years. Thank you, Mac.
Thank you. Thank you, Betty. God bless you. And you can do it. Thank you so much. I've never been photographed by a governor's wife before, to my knowledge. Anyway, what you can see why I go back for the last 50 years to her conservation camp. The ladies are so sweet and so nice, and I just wish my mother were here tonight. She would have believed what she said. But anyway, we're so grateful for the impact there. She has over 50 committees in her 3,000 members that she has to ride herd on, and as you all know, herding cats is not easy, but getting things done is what they've been good for, and we're so grateful for your support, and so it's such an encouragement to Rick Greaves and I. I think Rick has now said he digitalized 8,000 of slides of the South Cumberland, and if we ever get them finished with the right labels on them, I'll feel like we've accomplished a lot. We have so much to be grateful for tonight. I think this is almost an historic occasion. I doubt that we'll ever have another governor who will walk down through the wilderness like Savage and say, let's do it. But he did. Thank you, Winfield. I first heard about Savage Gulf when I went to a Wisconsin Natural Areas Conference 52 years ago this month. And a professor formerly of UT said, what are you doing to save Savage Gulf and May Prairie? With his Latvian accent. And it was Dr. Iltis, and he wouldn't shut up. And so I came back, I'd never heard of either one. I flew over Savage, and we had 4 county governors that wanted us to buy Scottsgulf for a park. And you looked at Scottsgulf, and it had just been logged. Here were these great stumps when I went in there with a Jeep, piled up with dead squirrels. It just made me sick. And then I went down and met Sam Werner and Dr. Yateman, and went to Savage Gulf and walked through the treasury of trees, what the people down here call the Werner Big Trees. They didn't call them Old Grove. That's a propaganda term from the Western Logging Company. But they called them what they were, God's original virgin forest, Werner's Big Trees. And Sam, when I met him, said, I'd like to see those big trees reseed the whole plateau. But you better hurry, the taxes are eating me up. And so we got busy. At that time, I came up here like John from Shelby Forest as a young naturalist. In '64, Governor Clement wanted to add some more parks, and he wanted to get a $5 million bond issue. And my commissioner, Don McSween, said, hit the road, Mac, and find the last of the best places and justify our getting them with 2 volumes, pictures and words. And we did. We put Davy Crockett's birthplace, we put Sergeant York's home place, we put Big Hill Pond in West Tennessee, Roan Mountain in East Tennessee, and Stone Door here in Grundy County. And we got Senator Crouch from McMinnville to co-sponsor our bill. And Governor Clement came down and said, you know, tourists are easier to pick than a bale of cotton, and they're worth more. And with that, the bill went through like a greased pig. And we bought Stone Door out here for $250 an acre. In 1965. It was our first acquisition. And then after Governor Dunn went through here in May of '71, we started work on getting more of these places preserved. We added the big timber tract of the Werner tract in 1974. We hired a natural areas administrator to help navigate that. The Natural Areas Act was written by 2 Oak Ridge scientists with the Project Manhattan, and they paddled the rivers on the weekends, and they see they were being dammed up and being bulldozed and logged, and so they wrote a Natural Areas Act, they wrote a Scenic Rivers Act, a Strip Mine Act, and a Scenic Trails Act, and we were able, with bipartisan support from a Democrat from Memphis, Bill Bruce, back there on that tripod, a tall fellow, and a Republican from Knoxville, Victor Ashe, so that we had bipartisan support for these bills. And we had Camelot for government during that period when Winfield was there. And his family, his daughter Gail is here tonight, I believe. So thank you so much, Gail. God bless you all. And I remember when you were little and he was inaugurated and you crawled out on the stoop overlooking the governor's mansion, and I got a picture of that too, I think, but I can't find it. It's somewhere. And anyway, we've had over the years such a wonderful panorama of pioneers of the park that have contributed so much. And look at us here tonight. President Jefferson said it best: there's no limit to the good you can do if you just keep doing it. And nobody exemplifies that better than the Friends Group. We were able to save Radnor Lake and then Savage Gulf, and then what the act did was to allow us to buy parks that were smaller than 1,000 acres, which was the guidelines up until the 70s. And that set up, we now have over almost 90 little natural areas, with some of the last of the plant and animal life in Tennessee that's preserved there. Understand that Sam Werner Sr. from Switzerland bought the land here for $2.50 an acre, and we got it for $250 an acre, and now you couldn't get it for $1,250,000. It's priceless, and so that's the heritage that you all are working. The continuance of this park beyond 15,000 acres is a coming miracle that you all are helping to achieve, and I'm so proud that you're doing it. The Herman Baggenstoss came to a meeting of the Middle Tennessee Conservancy in 1964, and the following year we invited the Nature Conservancy president down to Nashville, and he met Herman, and he said, "You're from Grundy County, where Savage Gulf is?" He said, "You be the chairman of the ad hoc Save Savage Committee." And Herman was editor of the Grundy County Herald. He had edited the first preliminary conservationist magazine, and Herman was a little steam engine. He wouldn't quit. And so he just kept on keeping on until finally in '79, the legislature set up the mechanism for the South Cumberland cluster of parks. This was a different idea. It's sort of like the Cumberland Trail now, which the garden clubs are also supporting, which is within 2% of being acquired. That's a remarkable achievement. God bless. The same kind of energy that's behind this is behind that. So I met Charlie Boyd and Bud Werner. Bud actually guided our first field trip out to the Savage with his Jeep club. And then later Herman wore out 2 Jeeps taking people out there to see the Savage. At one point we had 100 come from Oak Ridge. The people who wrote the Natural Areas Bill wanted to see what we were bragging about over here. And we tried to get them, discourage them. We said that 3 miles is going to be like 33 miles anywhere else. But anyway, by 5 in the morning, we got the last of them out, and Herman and I went home and had bourbon for breakfast. And it's remarkable that what Herman did and what Ron Castle in convening our first Friends group in 1991 and what you've done since. Only the Friends of Radnor can come up to the level that you all have. And here we have Howell Adams, the host with the most. God bless you for what you have been doing here with our garden club ladies came out here for our meeting. And I don't know if you realize it, but Sam McGee, would you raise your hand? Sam McGee this was his family farm at Laurel Falls. On the way out to Stone Door, we bought the property, but we had no access. And he gave a bargain sale with his family of their farm, which included Laurel Falls. And that's how we got the access into where we could build a ranger station. And then Sam didn't stop at that. He became a teacher of biology at St. Andrews in Manchester as well. And then he found a property up here of 1,100 acres on the mountain at Swanee. And with a few other friends, they have now paid off the mortgage, and that is going to be forever wild. Thank you, Sam. And I'm just getting a little beyond our Friends group to tell you the fact that they've then got Bluebell Island, which was being looted. They then helped to save Shake Rag Hollow with other alumni. And finally, they helped aid and abet with the push to preserve the land between the Swanee Domain all the way to Franklin Forest, which Dr. Yateman and his wife called the Cougar Corridor, because they saw more mountain lion in there, and they're still there, along with some bison down there, which is in the bottom of it. So we're delighted to see the efforts that what's been added in Tennessee in the last 20 years is an area equal to almost the size of the Smokies. And this is some of the best part of it. Dr. Quarterman said there's more diversity in Savage Gulf than there is in the Smokies. It's the best of the Mesozoic forests that there is left. And so we're very lucky that we were able to get it at the time. The hard thing is to keep it. We did a VIP tour of big donors with Howell Adams and with other people that had given, and we went down into the gorge, and it was just a magnificent trip. We did get about 100 chiggers per leg. I think Howell had a bad reaction from that, but that's the price you pay for wilderness. And we, when I was Natural Areas Administrator, we got Dr. Cheston's help at Swanee and got the Natural Bridge. We got the Carter Caves, since Cheston knew Mr. Carter and his granddaughter Joette, who's still in the area. And then later we hired a trail crew. Bob Richards is here. Bob, raise your hand. Bob was involved in a local trail crew called with Hank Landers, and they extended the Fiery Gizzard Trail down to Foster Falls, and now we're still at it after our forest fire and still reworking it. Years ago, Governor Dunn allowed us to condemn Sellers Farm. It was about to be bulldozed. That's where the famous Tennessee State artifact came from. And I was saying last year, maybe we ought to condemn some of the stuff that we can't get to otherwise. I was afraid we weren't going to get the Cumberland Trail committed. But we don't want to use that power unless the public welfare requires it. And that's what the governor said at the time. So we saved it, and it's still there. Anyway, we have made a lot of progress. Great praise for Jim Prince. He wanted to save land down there, Foster Falls. He went down to the legislature and did his homework like John William Greeter has been doing. And when I was Natural Areas Administrator, John was willing to talk his uncles into saving Greeter Falls property. And that's 386 acres is one of our crown jewels. And I'm so grateful to you and your family that we got that. And over the years, as Governor Dunn has said, all of us have been able to put an oar in the water in saving the savage. That's the Mississippi expression, I assume, and it's the best I've heard. Put an oar in the water. And if we just keep putting an oar in the water, we're going to see this place continue as we have. And I think this is the purpose of this, and posterity will thank us in the future for children yet to be born. And I would like to take a few minutes to recognize my friend Ed Thaxton, who was part of the reason that Governor Dunn was able to get. He hired an environmental advisor, and the previous governor had an environmental advisor, Justin Wilson, and he took the initiative to save the Cumberland Trail. And that makes the difference. I'm talking about Justin Wilson Trail, which we've now named for him. So Ed, come up and tell us a little bit of some of the stuff that you did, because you were involved with Winfield.
Thank you, Mac. Ladies and gentlemen, the biggest privilege I've had so far tonight is just to listen to Mac Pritchard. When I taught at Vanderbilt, I had a managed environment course and invited him to come and talk about saving the land at one of the lectures, and he was the most popular lecturer I had, much more popular than I was, obviously. But I want to tell you a little about how and why we were able in that 4-year span from 1971 to 1975 accomplish so much. For one thing, we had Mac Pritchard in the Department of Conservation feeding me all kinds of information. I had the privilege of working for the campaign of then candidate Dunn. In 1970, I was teaching at Vanderbilt and had the assignment to write a bunch of background papers about what the environmental problems of the state were and what we ought to do about them. And it was, I hope, helpful, and he got elected. And then I served for a year just giving informal advice from the outside and lobbying the legislature for some of the bills and this, that, and the other. And they decided they needed an environmental advisor to go into the newly formed policy office. So I spent 2 years on Capitol Hill working as the governor's environmental policy advisor. That is what enabled us and people like Mac Pritchard and throughout state government who were working toward those ends to accomplish so much. Because even though, most of you, I'm sure during that time, thought of Winfield Dunn as, the big guy down in the state capitol and this and that and the other and so far away and so just, to me, he was in the next building over and he was my boss. And he was the best boss I ever had. And I've had a lot. And the reason why was that he was really not a politician. He was a great governor, but he really wasn't a politician. The only question he ever asked us when we, Mac would give me these ideas and I would check with our office and with the Commissioner of Conservation, who was Bill Jenkins, and who incidentally was a fantastic help too, because he agreed with me when I arrived that the administration's chief priority for the capital budget in the Department of Conservation was not buildings, was not more inns or hospitality stuff, it was land. Because you can build buildings next year. You can't build land anymore after it's gone. But every time we would go to the governor with a recommendation, somewhat surprisingly to a lot of people around, he never asked, well, now who is this going to help and who is it going to offend and what are the political aspects? He never, ever, ever asked that. He only asked one question. What is best for the state of Tennessee? So having that kind of support from the top made it incredibly easy to get support throughout the state government. You know, it's amazing what kind of reaction and what kind of action you can get when you are able to send a memo just saying the governor wants so and so. It makes things happen. And he made an incredible amount of good stuff, environmental stuff, and I haven't got, it would take all night to tell you all about the stuff. You know most of it. The most important thing to you here is buying the land that now makes up the South Cumberland State Park. And Savage Gulf was the key piece that got that started. And when we sent the recommendation up to the Hill on buying that, he said, "Is that the land that Alf Adams was talking to me about?" I said, "Yes, that's it." He said, "Well, does Alf want it saved?" I said, "Yes." He says, "Let's do it." And that's the kind of governor he was. If the people that he trusted said that's best for the state of Tennessee, it got done. It was an incredible experience. It was an incredible environment in which to work. It was like living in Camelot, as Mac has said, with King Arthur on the throne and his beautiful queen back home, who also, I will have you know, we relied on also to talk to him when he got home about these things too. So she was a big help in this crusade back then, and I want to pay tribute to both of them. It's the finest couple that's ever been in the governor's mansion. He's the best boss I ever had, and the finest man I ever knew.
I don't know how to follow that. That was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's wonderful and certainly heartfelt. Yeah, thank you. You know, that kind of brings out the human side. You know, there's a wonderful human side of state parks, and that's such an important aspect of the park experience. We've certainly got a beautiful park here, scenic vistas, wonderful places to hike. But the reason the visitors here at our park have such great experiences is because of the tremendous staff that we have. The land may make us the largest state park, but the staff definitely makes us the best of the state parks. And so I just want to recognize the staff that's here this evening. Park Manager George Shin, we're so glad to be able to say that, Park Manager. Bill Knapp, the Assistant Park Manager, is here this evening. He was out all day with his flintlock rifle, and George was out there throwing tomahawks. It was a great day. We've also got Murray Giesling is here tonight. Aaron Reed. Park Greer. John Ball and Jesse McNeil and Jason Reynolds weren't able to come tonight, but these guys all do such a wonderful job, and we just want to give them so much thanks. Thank y'all. Also, see, I thought I've probably forgotten people along the way, but I don't want to forget Bill Avant's here tonight too. He's the lands manager for Tennessee State Parks, and he's been working to do all kinds of great deals for us here lately, and we appreciate Bill. Also, want to mention, we have public officials that partner with us and that help us, and that makes such a huge difference. As we've heard tonight about everything that Governor Dunn has done, I just want to recognize Representative Janice Bowling, Senators Janice Bowling's here tonight. Thank you. Mayor Rodman from Monteagle, I think, is here. Thank them for being here. So I guess that brings us to our guest of honor, Governor Dunn. It's my honor and privilege to have met you and gotten to know you a little bit today, and so much appreciate, we all do, everything you've done for the park and for all of us. And thank you so much for coming tonight. Your wife Betty, it's been great to have y'all here today.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. Ed Thaxton, you overwhelm me. Thank you for your kind words. Mike Pritchard, the same. Time has a way of fleeting, and you want to reach out and stop it for just a moment, and that doesn't work. Tonight, Ed Thaxton and Mac Pritchard and Betty Dunn are the only three members of my administration that I am comfortable not only are around, but will be around. Time has a way of slipping by. Time has certainly slipped by on me. I'm at the stage in life where when I reach down to tie my shoes, I look around to see if there's anything else I can do while I'm down there. You learn these little maneuvers as the years pass by. What a thrill it is to be in this magnificent facility that Howell Adams and Madeline Adams have made available to us. It's just exciting to be within these walls and to view it all in one sweeping glance. Congratulations for what you've done. I want you to know that my journey into Savage Gulf was memorable in many ways. I was advised by my staff shortly after I had become the governor. I was busy trying to learn to be a governor at that time, but I was advised that a group wanted very much for me to go on a journey up in Grundy County, Tennessee, a place I had not campaigned in much because there really weren't many Republicans in Grundy County when I was running for governor. When I learned that Alf Adams, who had been so helpful in my campaigning, was one of the initiators of this journey they wanted me to share with them through a remote part of our state. I certainly agreed to do so. The day came, we found ourselves in the county. I learned that the program called for a group of us to mount horses and to ride into Savage Gulf. All of this was completely new to me. I was just trying to take it all in. Horses, that's good. I was on a horse when I was a boy. I knew how to do that. I had a trooper assigned to me, however, a fine, burly, physical fitness trooper who had been with me for some time and who was devoted to seeing that everything went well with me. I looked around as I mounted my horse, and there he was, frozen in the saddle, absolutely terrorized to be off of his feet and on 4 strange feet. We entered the Gulf. I didn't count on him for much security. We entered the Gulf and we rode quite a few miles by horseback. I was taking it all in. Born a Mississippian in flatland country, coming from Memphis, which was somewhat flatland country, I found myself in this incredible environment, this wilderness. A point came where we dismounted the horses. They were led away, and we were told, I was told by Mac Pritchard, who happened to be behind me in a single file, that we were to wind our way across this part of the Gulf. Off we went. I had on a pair of new boots and I was very comfortable. We trekked along and suddenly we found ourselves not on grass, but on boulders, large boulders that were lined up across this area. And we made our way carefully, jumping, stepping. Suddenly I came to a spot where the strange odor came up and filled my nostrils. But I was moving and I couldn't stop. But as I went forward, I said, "What was that strange smell?" Mac was behind me. He said, "Oh, that was just a rattlesnake bed." I began to realize somewhat where I was. We finally made it to a gathering point where there were cars to greet us, to feed us, and to take us out of the Gulf. Well, that was an exciting event, one I'll never forget, among many that I've enjoyed with Mac Pritchard. At any rate, from that point on, it was simply a matter of convincing legislative leaders that they needed to provide enough funds to acquire the land that the owners of that part of Savage Gulf were about to sell. And we were able to do it. And I have reaped reward after reward for that action, which should be given in thanks to the legislators and those who created the legislation. But I did spearhead the drive, and I'm very grateful for the credit I've been given. And it seems that plans are afoot to enlarge the park, and I'm very excited to hear that. Such a beautiful piece of land, contiguous, is being considered. And so I really have been grateful for this opportunity over time. But I've got to tell you one or two other little things. I got a call from Alf Adams sometime maybe in March, February of 1971. Alf said, "You need to get away." He said, "I'm building a place up in Beersheba," which I had never heard of. And he said, "I want you to come up with me He said, I have a lady who'll cook our supper, and we'll stay in one of the rooms that I've nearly completed and spend the night. And he said, you'll enjoy it. It'll be a great getaway. Be sure to bring a fifth of whiskey. I brought some whiskey. I was curious and I wanted to go because I liked Alf so much. We got to this partially completed, very large building that was a home he had planned, and as an engineer, he had pretty well created a very nice place. He said, we're going to spend the night in this room. It's not quite completed, but the fireplace works. We're going to build a fire, and we'll sleep in a bed that's in there. I'm fascinated because it is bitterly cold. We got there, we popped the top off of the bottle, warmed ourselves a little bit. He kept talking about Flossie. Finally, he said, it's time for us to go. Flossie's got our supper ready for us. I was half frozen at that time. The alcohol, instead of warming, literally lets your body heat out and makes you think you're being warm. I was cold. We went to this house here in Beersheba, and I met Miss Flossie Argo. She had our dinner ready for us. I couldn't believe I was warm again all of a sudden. Alf said, where do you want us to sit, Flossie? Miss Argo said, you'll have to sit outside this house. No man is under my roof after dark. You can bet I didn't forget that trip with Alf out to Beersheba. And then I became acquainted with Beersheba on our trip through Savage Gulf, and the whole thing was an unbelievably pleasant experience. I'm delighted to have been here tonight because I'm confident you all did not come out of curiosity. You can find old governors almost anywhere. I think this group came because your heart brought you here. I'm certain that if we heard the story from each one of you here tonight, you'd have something very touching and very moving to say about the park, about these fine rangers that I've seen today who serve it so beautifully, about the economic benefits that come to Grundy and 4 other counties because of this park. At any rate, it's been an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to have been here today. My wife, Betty Dunn, who sits here, my daughter, Gail Dunn Hurley, who sits with her mother, my granddaughter, Catherine Hurley Mize, who sits with her husband, Hunter Mize, my son-in-law, Dr. Edwin Hurley, have all warmed my heart today by their presence here, and you have topped it all off on this occasion, and I am certainly grateful. Thank you very much.
You'd like to say something, Bob?
You've actually left somebody out.
Okay, I'm certain I would. Please.
Actually, it's not a somebody, it's the Tennessee Valley Authority. As Mac mentioned, Herman Bagenstos. Herman not only was the little engine that could, Herman also never took no for an answer. And so I'm not sure who Herman knew within the Tennessee Valley Authority, but he somehow had come up with the concept of the South Cumberland Recreation Area with these 10 areas scattered across 3 counties, and they needed to be managed under one entity, which would be the state of Tennessee. But he went and talked to Max Ramsey, who was then the chairman of TVA, and somehow he wrangled a $1 million commitment over a 10-year period that TVA would do certain things as needed and provide $1 million for the development of this area. And their primary reason, which they realized, is this area is one, spectacularly beautiful, but it needed all the economic help it could get. And the development of the South Cumberland Recreation Area would help with that, accomplish that task. So over the course of the 10 years, one of the first things TVA did was to develop a master plan. And so we used to have our office down in Tracy City in the Grundy County building. And we had this little master plan booklet that was this thick, and it had an orange cover so you couldn't miss it. And it had this map in it that folded out about this big. And so we took that map, hung it up on the wall, got a bunch of topo maps, and started plotting our progress with the trails. The last, and TVA had a stake in the game because they own Foster Falls and they own the Foster Falls Small Wilds area. So they actually own property that was part of South Cumberland. I had the good fortune of being involved with the metal bridge that's right down the trail that helps get across the creek that creates Foster Falls. TVA built that bridge, trucked it up here, flew it into place with a helicopter, and so it was quite a phenomenal event. And then the last thing that they did, they purchased what was called the Mountain Recreation Center, which is the visitor center down there between Tracy City and Mont Eagle. And they paid $136,000 for that property. And so now we have the epicenter of the South Cumberland. So all that was because of the fact that Herman Bagenstos would not take no for an answer and was able to wrangle $1 million out of TVA.
I was trying to leave Ed some time, and I left out about half of what I was going to say. We were suing under Governor Dunn, TVA, over the snail darter and the lack of good environmental impact statement, and it embarrassed TVA. And Herman got a hold of Red Wagner and said, I've got a possibility that you will get in good PR with the environmentalists. And so Herman made him an offer that he couldn't refuse. It reminds me of Marvin Runyon. When Mary Priestley and Latham asked me to be a co-chair of their fundraising, I said, you need somebody with deeper pockets than an administrative assistant number 2. And they got Marvin Runyon. And Marvin had been Postmaster General. He had been Nissan and TVA. They called him Carbon Marvin because he downsized TVA a good bit, made it more efficient. But toward the end of our fundraiser, which was really done mostly by Latham and Mary and the rest of the committee, they squeezed gently on Beersheba, on the cliff tops, and on the Mont Eagle Assembly, and they got 600,000. And then at the last, Marvin said to Mac, I've got a disease, I'm going to not last much longer, it's an incurable lung problem. And I said, well, Marvin, there's one more thing you might do. You might see about getting some money for Fire Gizzard. He picked up the phone, he called the senator in charge of the finance committee, and he said, Ted Stevens, you remember, this is Marvin, you remember those bricks I used to let you ship out to the Aleutian Islands on the mail boats? And I couldn't hear the end of the conversation, but I think it was yes. And how much money do you want? Just a couple of million for Fire Gizzard, and that's the quickest we ever got a couple of million. The other thing I left out is see Dr. Bigby. Would you raise your hand, you and your wife? Dr. Bigby, for many years, kept the Savage Gulf League going. Our committee, that committee that Herman Bagenstos chaired, morphed into the Savage Gulf Preservation League. And Wally's group, Reverend Mays, wrote every legislator a personal letter and said, please help us save Savage Gulf. So when the bill came through, they all knew what it was all about. And Senator Crouch from McMinnville was the lead in that, co-sponsored that. And he had 3 other parks in his district: Stone Door, Stone Fort, Rock Island, and Bone Cave. We got them all. And it just shows what you can do if we just keep doing it. God bless.
Thank you, Mac. And I just want to give a special thanks to all of our speakers and honorees tonight. It's just been a wonderful and lovely evening. I want to give out a special thanks to some of the people that this would not have happened without. Rick Dreves and Kelly Baggett. There's no way we could have pulled this off without them. Sam Baggett, Deb Dreves, Park Greer, and Katie Gray and Margaret Maitons all put in so much tremendous work on this, and I just wanted to thank all of them. That's it for the program, but hang around. We mingle, visit. When you get ready to go out to the parking lot, it's a little dark out there. If you need some lights, we've got some people around with flashlights. Please ask for help if you need it getting around. And thank y'all for coming and for having such a wonderful evening here tonight. Thank you.